Hello everyone. In this video, we will discuss the questions in paper 4 of variant 1 in the May-June 2024 series. So then let's get started with the first question. So we are given a table here with the four largest rainforests in the world and the areas. The first part of the question is to calculate the area of the Valdivian rainforest as a percentage of the area of the Amazon rainforest. So Amazon rainforest should be at the bottom and as a percentage, so we need to times it by 100. So Valdivian rainforest is given to us as 250,000. This should be over the Amazon rainforest, which is 5,500,000. And then I need to times it by 100 to convert it into percentage. So then 250,000 over 5,500,000 times 100 is 4.545. So correct to two decimal places, it's going to be 4.55%. Then the second part of the question is to write the ratio of Valdivian, Atlantic, and Congo rainforests area in the simplest form. So Valdivian, it's 250,000. Then Atlantic is given to us as 1,315,000. And then Congo is given to us as 2 million. Now we need to write this in the simplest form. I'm going to divide all three by 1,000. When I do that, the 3 zeros in the ends will get cancelled out. Then I'm going to divide this 250. I'm going to divide it by a 5. So each one of this, I'm going to divide it by a 5. So when I divide it by a 5, I end up getting 50 for 250. So I get 50 here. I'm going to divide this one also by the same 5. I get 263. And then I will have 400. This is the ratio in the simplest form. So when we try to write it in the simplest form, we need to make sure that we divide all of it by the same amount. Let's move on to the third part of the question. The Amazon rainforest has 60% of its area in Brazil and 10% of its area in Colombia. 43 1/3% of the remaining area of the rainforest is in Peru. We need to calculate the percentage of Amazon rainforest in Brazil, Colombia, and Peru, which means the three amounts has to be added together. So we already know that when it comes to Brazil, it's going to be 60%. So 60% is in Brazil. When it comes to Colombia, it's going to be 10%. We need to calculate what percent is in Peru. But in the question, it clearly states that 43 wholes and 1/3% of the remaining area is in Peru. So the remaining area means, now if 60% and 10% is in Brazil and Colombia, that's going to make 70%. So the remaining is going to be 30%. So 43 wholes 1/3% of 30% is in Peru. So that's going to be 43 1/3% of 30% is in Peru. So we need to calculate what this amount is. I'm going to put this in the calculator and see what I get as a percentage for this. So that is, I'm going to do 43 wholes. So I'm going to press this. Okay, 43 wholes. And then I have 1/3. This percentage. So I'm going to put the percentage mark as well. Of 30. So that is what I'm going to find. So when I calculate that, I get 13. So that's going to be 13%. So 13% out of 100 is in Peru, which means if I'm to calculate the percentage of Amazon rainforest that is in Brazil, Colombia, and Peru, I need to add these three amounts together. So 60, 10, and 13 makes it 83%. Let's move on to the next question that we have. The area of the Amazon rainforest represents 27/50 of the total area of the rainforest in the world. Calculate the total area of rainforest in the world. Give your answer correct to the nearest 100,000 square kilometers. So I've put that table here in the side. It's the same table that was given at the top. So I've put it in the side here. So the Amazon rainforest is going to be 27 out of 50th of the total rainforest in the world. That means 27 over 50 is only equal to this Amazon rainforest, that is going to be 5,500,000 square kilometers. Now we need to calculate the total area of the rainforest. So the total is going to 50 out of 50 because 50 is the denominator. So the Amazon rainforest is calculated out of total, which is 50. If it's 50 portions, out of 50 portions, 27 portions is going to be for Amazon rainforest. That means as we are supposed to find the total area of the rainforest, we need to find what 50 out of 50 is, which means I'm going to first find what one portion out of 50 is. So 27 portions is 5,500,000 means for me to find what one portion is, I need to divide this 5,500,000 that I have, that is given in the question, by 27 to calculate the value of one portion. So this is the value of one portion. And then this answer that I have has to be times by a 50 for me to find the value of 50 portions. That is going to give me the complete answer. So in this case, we end up getting 185,185.19. So let me put that here. So I'll write 50 over 50 here. So we ended up getting 10,185,185.19. This many square kilometers is the total area. But then we are supposed to write our answer to the nearest 100,000 square kilometers. So we need to check the digit in the 100s column, 100,000s column, which is going to be this digit. I underline the next digit because I need to round it. So I have an 8, which is more than a 5, so I can definitely round this up. So which ends up giving us 10 million. This 1 becomes a 2, so that becomes 10,200,000 square kilometers. So this is the total area of rainforest in the world. Let's move on to the next part of the question. In the world, 60.7 hectares of rainforest are lost every minute. Calculate the total area in hectares of rainforest that is lost in 365 days. But we need to make sure to give our answer in the standard form. So then, in 1 minute, we know 60.7 hectares is lost, which means if I times it, if I'm to calculate in 1 hour, the amount of rainforest that is lost, I need to times this by 60. This is the amount lost in 1 hour. Then in a day, if I'm to calculate, I need to times this by 24. Then that will be the amount of rainforest lost in 24, in a day or within 24 hours. Then I'm going to times this by 365 to check how much of the rainforest is lost in 365 days. So this amount that I end up getting has to be written in the standard form. So I'm going to find what I get as the answer for this. So I'm going to put this in the calculator. So I have 60.7 times by 60 to convert it into to convert it into an hour, to check how much is lost in an hour, times by 24 to check how much is lost in a day, times by 365 to calculate how much is lost in 365 days. This is what I get. So then this answer, I'm going to write it in the standard form. So when I write it in the standard form, I need to put the decimal point in between the 3 and the 1 that I have. So that becomes 3.1903920. But I'm also going to write this answer to 3 significant figures or 2 decimal places. That means it's going to be 3.19. So let me put this complete number first. So we end up getting 3.1903920. This is what we got. The decimal point is here. For any whole number, I'm going to move it so that it's placed in between the 3 and the 1. So this becomes 3.19. All the other digits I'm not going to write because I'm writing it in the to 3 significant figures or 2 decimal places. times it by, I moved 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps. So that's going to be 10 to the power 7. This is what I get. Let's move on to the next part of the question. The Amazon River has a length of 6,440 kilometers, correct to the nearest 10 kilometers. The Congo River has a length of 4,400 kilometers, correct to the nearest 100 kilometers. Calculate the upper bound of the difference between the lengths of Amazon rainforest and Amazon River and the Congo River. So as we're supposed to find the difference here, so difference means it's something to do with subtraction. So Amazon River is the longest river here compared to Congo River. So from Amazon River, I need to subtract Congo River to calculate that difference. But then this is a question that is to do with bounds. When we do a subtraction calculation, and in the question, we can clearly see that they are asking us to find the upper bound. If we are to find the upper bound for a subtraction calculation, the first value that we write has to be the upper bound, and the second value, that the value that is being subtracted, has to be the lower value. Only then it will give you the largest possible value, which will be the upper bound for the difference. So that means for the Amazon River, I need to use the upper bound of it, and for the Congo River, I need to use the lower bound of it. Now I need to find what's the upper bound and the lower bound for this. Now, when it comes to Amazon River, it says it's going to be 6,440, but to the nearest 10 kilometer, this amount has to be divided by a 2 to find how much has to be added or deducted to calculate the upper bound or the lower bound. So 10 divided by 2 is a 5. So this 5 kilometers is added or deducted to find the upper bound and the lower bound. Now we need the upper bound of it. So 6,440 plus 5 makes it 6,445. So this is the amount that I need to write here. I don't have to calculate this because I only need the upper bound of it. I need to subtract the lower bound of the Congo River. So Congo River is 4,400 kilometers long, and it's given to the nearest 100 kilometers, which means this has to be divided by 2 to find how much has to be added or deducted to calculate the upper bound and the lower bound. So when I divide it by 2, I get 50. This is the amount that has to be added or subtracted to find the upper bound and the lower bound. So to this 4,400, I need to add a 50 to find the upper bound and subtract a 50 to find the lower bound. I need the lower bound for the Congo River's length. So 4,400 minus 50 is going to be 4,350. So this is the amount that has to be deducted. So from 6,445, when I subtract 4,350, I get 2,095 kilometers. So this is going to be the difference, which is the upper bound of the difference. With that, we are done with the first question. Let's move on to question 2. On the grid, draw the image of triangle T after a reflection in the x-axis. This is the triangle that is given to us. After it's been reflected on the x-axis, how would it look like? So this is the x-axis that is given to us. So I need to reflect. So when I reflect, it means I need to flip it. So this is 1 unit from the x-axis, 1 unit below the x-axis. So I need to do the same thing, but in the opposite direction. So this is where it will be. This vertex is 3 units below the x-axis. I need to do it in the opposite direction. So it will be 3 units above the x-axis. So it's going to be here. This unit is again 3 units below the x-axis. You do the same thing in the opposite direction. It's going to be here. So this is where the reflected image would look like. The second part of the question is triangle T after a translation by the vector -5, -2. So a column vector is given to us. The value at the top explains how many units you need to move to the right or to the left, and the value at the bottom explains how many units you need to move up or down. As the value of x, that is as the top value, as the top number is negative, it means I need to go 5 units to the left. As the bottom number is negative, so I need to go 2 units down. That means if I pick this vertex that I have here, I need to go 5 units to the left and 2 units down. So this is where this particular vertex will be. That means this one will be 4 units to the right from this. So this is where it is. This is going to be here. So I'm going to connect them together. This is where my image would be. Then the third part of the question is an enlargement question, where it states that this triangle T has to be enlarged by a scale factor of -½ with the center -1, 1. The first step to do for a question like this is to identify the center of enlargement, which is -1, 1. So -1, 1 is the center of enlargement in this case. So I figured it out. I have marked it. What you got to do next is you need to see how far away each vertex of this triangle is from the center of enlargement that is mentioned, and we need to times it with the scale factor mentioned in the question, which is -½ which means this particular vertex is 3 units to the right and 2 units down. 3 to the right and 2 down from the center of enlargement. The scale factor given to us is given as -½ When I times it by -½ this becomes 3 times -½ becomes -1.5. That means 1.5, but then it's not going to be to the right as it's negative, it's going to be in the opposite direction. 2 times -1/2 means that's going to be -1, which means 1 in the opposite direction. So this shows it has to go 2 units down, but this time it's going to be up. From the center of enlargement, 1.5 units to the left. So 1/2 a unit here and 1 unit up. So that's going to be here, which means this particular vertex will be here when it's enlarged by a scale factor of -½ I'm going to check the next vertex, which is this one. So if I check this vertex that is given to us, so it's going to be 6 units to the right, and then it has to go 4 units down. So I'm going to times it by -½ because that is the scale factor given to us. So 6 times -½ is going to be 3, but as it's negative, it's going to be in the opposite direction. 4 times -½ is going to be 2 units up. If it's positive, it will be in the same direction. So from this, I need to go 3 units to the left and 2 units up, which means this vertex will be here. Then this is the next vertex that I have, that is 2 units to the right and then 4 units down. I need to times it with the scale factor, which is -½ So this makes it -1 and -2 here. That means as it's a negative, it explains that we need to move 1 unit in the opposite direction and 2 units up. So from here, I need to go 1 unit to the left and 2 units up. So this is where this particular vertex will be enlarged. So then I'm going to connect these points together. So this is how my enlargement would look like when it's done by a scale factor of -½ about this particular center. Let's move on to the next part of the question. A shape P is enlarged by a scale factor 3 to give shape Q. So P is enlarged by a scale factor to give shape Q. So I'll put it as 3 here. Shape Q is then enlarged by a scale factor of 2/5. So this is enlarged by a scale factor of 2/5 to give shape R. The area of shape P is 10 square centimeters. We need to calculate the area of shape R. Now this is something to do with area. That means we cannot use the scale factor here. The scale factor given to us, which is this 3 and 2/5, they are the linear scale factor. we will have to make use of the area scale factor, which means the area scale factor is the square of the linear scale factor, which means this and this amount has to be squared. So if I'm to calculate the area of shape R, this 10 has to be timesed with the first scale factor and then again times with the second scale factor that is mentioned here. So I need to do 10 times 3 squared times 2/5 the entire thing square. This gives us the area of the shape R. So I'm going to put this in the calculator. So it's going to be 10 times 3 square. Then I need to times it with 2/5 square. So I'm going to put the 2/5 within the brackets because I need to square the entire thing. So 2/5, I'm going to close the bracket with the square. So this will give me the answer as 14.4. So 14.4 square centimeters is going to be the area of shape R. Let's move on to the next question that we have. Question 3. C is equal to a quarter xy squared, quarter times xy squared. Find C when x is 5, y is 8. So we just have to substitute it in this case. So quarter times x is 5, y is 8. So I have a square for y, so I need to do it like this. So when I put this in the calculator, I would get 80 as the value for C. The second part of the question, find the positive value of y when C is 15 and x is 2.4. So in this case, the equation given to us is, the formula or the equation given to us is C is equal to quarter xy squared. I need to find the value of y, which means I need to make y the subject. So to do that, I need to bring this quarter to the other side as well as the x to the other side. So in this quarter, I'm going to bring the 4 to the other side. So the 4 is dividing. When I take it to the other side, it gets multiplied. Or else directly what I could do is I can take the complete fraction to the other side. When I do that, it will flip and multiply with C. So that way, when I flip and multiply with C, it becomes 4. 1/4 becomes 4/1, which is the same as a 4. 4 times C is 4C. 4C is equal to xy squared. So if I'm to bring the x also to the other side, x is multiplying when it's in this side. When I take it to the other side, I have to divide it by x. So this will be equal to y squared. So if I'm to find what y is, I need to square root this. This will give me the value of y. But the moment I put the square root for a fraction like this or for a positive number like this, it will end up giving me a positive value as an or at the same time a negative value. But in the question, we are supposed to find only the positive value of it, which means I'm not going to find the negative value of it. So I would do 4 times 15 over the value of x is 2.4, and then I need to square root the answer that I get here. Let's put this in the calculator and see what we get. So square root, we have the fraction, 4 times 15 should be in the numerator. Oopsie. Okay, and in the denominator, we have 2.4. So this gives me 5 as the value for y. So the value of y is 5. Let's move on to the next part of the question. Write as a single fraction in its simplest form. We have 2 fractions and we have a subtraction in between. So whenever we have subtraction or even addition, we need to make sure that the denominators of the fractions are the same. In this case, the denominators are not the same. So we have to make it the same. To make it the same, I need to multiply the first fraction's denominator with 2x plus 5. I need to do the same thing to its numerator as well. And the second fraction's denominator, to make it the same as the first fraction, to make both the same, I need to multiply with x minus 1. I need to do the same thing to its numerator as well. So this way, I end up getting, so I'm going to write it here. I get 4 brackets 2x plus 5. I have minus 3 brackets x minus 1, and at the bottom I have x minus 1, 2x plus 5. So I have written both these fractions over the same denominator, and now I'm going to expand it. So when I expand it, I get 4 times 2x, which is 8x, 4 times 5, which is 20, so that's plus 20. And then I have minus 3 times x, so that's going to be minus 3x. And I have minus 3 times minus 1, that is plus 3, over this denominator, which is x minus 1, 2x plus 5. We are not going to expand the denominator. I'm going to combine the like terms. 8x minus 3x is going to be equal to 5x plus 20, and the 3 together makes it 23. And I'm going to write over this denominator, which is x minus 1 and 2x plus 5. It's important that you write the denominator in the form of factors itself without expanding the brackets, because there can be instances when the numerator, after we simplify it like this, there can be instances when we can factorize it further. So if we are able to factorize it further, sometimes it may get cancelled with the denominator after we factorize. So it's always important to keep our final answer for the denominator in the form of factors. And if the numerator can be factorized, always try to factorize it. Let's move on to the next part of the question. Expand and simplify. So we need to expand this question. So we have 2x plus 3. 4 minus x, the entire thing square means it's going to be 4 minus x times 4 minus x. So I need to multiply these two brackets together. So let me multiply these two together first. So 4 times 4 is 16. So I can even do it in the side. Okay, I'll do that in the side. So I have 4 minus x and 4 minus x. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times minus x is minus 4x. Minus x times 4 is again minus 4x. Minus x times minus x is plus x squared. So these two together, we can combine the like terms, making it minus 8x. So we have minus 8x plus x squared and 16. So I can rearrange this and write if I want. So I can write it as x squared minus 8x plus 16 as the answer for this when we expand these two brackets. I also have another bracket in front, which is this 2x plus 3. Now I'm going to expand these two together. So I'm going to multiply it. So 2x times x squared is 2x cubed. 2x times minus x is minus 16x. And I also have a square to it. 2x times 16 is going to be 32x. 3 times x squared is going to be 3x squared. 3 times minus 8x is going to be minus 24x. 3 times 16 is plus 48. This is what I get. Now I need to combine all the like terms. So I can combine this minus 16x squared with plus 3x squared, which makes it minus 13x squared. Then plus 32x and minus 24x I can combine and write it as 8x. And then I have plus 48. And right in front of it, I'm going to put 2x cubed. This is what I get as the answer for this question. Also, there's one more thing that I wanted to mention here in this question. Now, whenever we have a subtraction, it's very important to note, that is, when you multiply the second fraction with an expression like this x minus 1, keep in mind, we just don't multiply it with the 3. We multiply it with the sign here. That is another thing you need to keep in mind. If not, your answer will be incorrect. So yeah, with that, we are done with this question. Let's move on to the next part of it. We need to simplify this fraction that is given to us. So this is something to do with indices. So we have y to the power 8 over 16, x to the power 16. The entire thing has a negative fractional index. Whenever we have a negative fractional index, to make the negative fractional index into a positive fractional index, we need to flip the fraction that we have. So as you can see here on the side, I've mentioned it here. So when I flip this fraction, xy becomes y over x, and the negative fractional index becomes positive fractional index. So I'm going to do the same thing here. When I do that, I get 16 8 to the x to the power 16 over y to the power 8. This entire thing will have a positive fractional index, which is 3/4. Now I'm going to write this 16 in the index form. That is going to be 2 to the power 4. I can write it like that. Then I have x to the power 16 over y to the power 8. This entire thing has a power of 3/4. This 3/4 belongs to all these terms powers. It gets multiplied with all the powers of the terms given. That means it will multiply with the 4, 16 as well as this 8. So it's going to be like 2 to the power 4 times 3/4. Then I have x to the power 16 times 3/4. And in the denominator, I will have y to the power 8 times 3/4. This is what I have. I now need to simplify this. When I simplify it, so the 4 that I have here for the 2 to the power 4, I can cancel it with the denominator. So these two will cancel out. So it becomes 2 to the power 3, that is equal to an 8. I can simplify the 16 and the 4. This becomes a 1 and this becomes a 4. So 4 times 3 is 12. So that becomes x to the power 12 over this 4, and the 8 can be divided by a 4, making this a 2. So 2 times 3 is a 6. So y to the power 6. This is my answer in the simplest form. And whenever we have a negative index, we should always try to keep it in the positive form. So in this case, I have got it in the positive form. So we can also do by multiplying the indices of the terms inside the brackets with the negative fractional index that is given to us. There's no problem with that. But in the end, we need to make sure that the indices are all positive. Let's move on to the next question, which is question 4. Jian records the time in seconds that some cars take to travel 195 kilometers. The box and whisker plot shows this information. So the information is given to us in the box and the whisker plot. We need to calculate the median. When we have a box and a whisker plot, this end will always give us the minimum value. The other end gives us the maximum value. When we consider the box, the 3 lines in the box gives us the quartiles. So it's the lower quartile, median, or that's also called the second quartile. And the lower quartile is also called as the first quartile. Then we have the upper quartile in the other end, or we call that as the third quartile. Now we need to find the median. That is going to be this line. This line here is here. So that's going to be 9.3. So it's going to take 9.3 seconds. That's the median time. We need to find the interquartile range. The interquartile range is the difference between the upper quartile and the lower quartile, which means according to this, this is my upper quartile and this is my lower quartile. My upper quartile is 11.6 and the lower quartile is 8.2. So I need to find the difference between the two. So 11.6 minus 8.2 is equal to 3.4. So that is going to be the interquartile range. Then the next part of the question is, find the difference between the average speed of the fastest car and the average speed of the slowest car. Give your answer in kilometers per hour. The fastest car will take the shortest amount of time or the smallest amount of time. And the slowest car will take the longest time. Now, when we consider speed, speed is equal to distance over time. We are supposed to calculate the speed here. So to calculate the speed, it should be a distance over time. So then the distance was already mentioned in the question stating that the cars travel 195 meters. That means it's going to be 195 meters over some amount of time. Now, in this case, if I'm to find the difference between the times, the fastest car, like I mentioned, will have the smallest time. So the smallest time or the shortest amount of time is going to be 6 seconds. So I need to divide this by 6. So this will give me the speed of the fastest car. I need to deduct the speed of the slowest car. Again, it's going to travel the same distance, which is 195 meters. Divide by the time taken by the slowest car. So the slowest car will take the longest period of time. So that's going to be 13 seconds here. So I need to divide this by 13. I'm going to put this in the calculator and see what I get as the answer. So I have 195 divided by 6. From this, I need to subtract 195 divided by 30. So when I do that, I end up getting 17.5 as the answer. But this 17.5, the answer that I get will be in meters per second, because the distance given to us is given in meters and the time given to us is given in seconds. So now I need to convert this into kilometers per hour. The meaning of this 17.5 meters per second is in 1 second, it travels 17.5 meters. This is the meaning. I need to convert this into kilometers per hour, that is kilometers over hour. So to convert meters to kilometers, I need to, meters to kilometers, I need to divide by 1,000. Because I'm converting a smaller unit to a larger unit. So I need to divide by the same amount, that is by 1,000. So I'm going to divide this by 1,000. And seconds to hours also, I will have to do the division because a smaller unit is converted to a larger unit. And in 1 hour, we know that there are 3,600 seconds. So that is 60 times 60. So when I do this, I will get my answer in kilometers per hour. So I'm going to put this in the calculator. So I have 17.5 in the numerator. I'm going to divide that by 1,000. And then in the denominator, I have 1 second. So I'm going to divide that 1 by 3,600. So when I do that, I get the answer as 63. This 63 is going to be the answer in kilometers per hour. Let's move on to the next question. Matilda records the distance that 80 different cars can travel with a full tank of fuel. The table shows the information. The table is given to us. Write down the class interval that contains the median. So median is the one that is the middle score. So we have 80 different cars. So to find the score in the middle, you need to do 80 plus 1 divide by 2. So that's going to be 81.5. 81 divided by 2, which is going to be 40.5, which means it's the distance between the 40th value and the 41st value. The value in between these two is what you need to find. When I add 7 and 13, I get 20. 20 and 19 makes 39. That means the 39 score is in this group, which means from the 40th score until the 60th score, it will be in this group. So the median is in this group. So that's going to be 420 to 450. The next part of the question is to calculate an estimate for the mean. When it comes to mean, we have two formulas. We can use sum of scores over number of scores or fx over f. But sum of scores over number of scores is used when the values are given to you in the form of a list. In this case, it's not given as a list. This is given in the form of a table. So in that case, we will use fx over f. So for us to use fx over f for this question, frequency is all known to us. When it comes to x, the value of x is the distance in this case, but it's given as a group to us. So as it's given as a group, we have to always consider the mid value. If the value is given as an individual value, that is the value you would consider as the value for x. But as it's given as a group, we will have to calculate the mid value for each of these groups. So for 250 to 300, if I'm to find the mid value, I need to add the two numbers and divide by 2. So that way it gives me 275. 300 to 400 gives me 350. 400 to 420 gives me 410. 420 to 450 is 435. And then in between these two, I have 475. So if I'm to calculate the median, I will have to do fx. So that is, I need to multiply the frequency and the values together, mid values together. So 275 times 7. Then I need to do 350 times 13. Add that with 410 times 19. 435 times 21. and then 475 times 20. And then I need to divide it by the total of the frequency. So when we add these, it will give us 80. That is already given in the question. So this will give us the mean when we do the division. So I'm going to quickly put that in the calculator and see what we get. So 275 times 7 plus 350 times 13. Add that with 410 times 19. I need to add that with 435 times 21. Add that with 475 times 20. And then I need to divide it with 80. So I end up getting the value as 411.25. This is going to be the mean. Let's move on to the next part of the question. A histogram is drawn to show the information in the table. The height of the bar for the interval is given to us as, for this particular interval, which is 250 to 300, is given as 2.8. We need to calculate the height of these three bars that is mentioned. I have put the same table that was given at the top here so that it's easier for me to do the calculation here. That's why. So you can even do it at the top itself. So I have put that a smaller version of that table here. So in this case, if I'm to find the height of it, I need to first find what's the frequency density. To do that, I need to find the frequency and divide it by the class width to calculate the frequency density. So here the frequencies are all given to us. I need to find the class width. So the class width for each one of this is going to be the distance between these two. So in this case, it's 50, then 100, 20, then I have 30, and then I have 50. That's the class width. So I need to divide the frequency with the class width. These two has to be divided for me to find the frequency density. So then I need to divide 7 by 50. So 7 by 50, I end up getting 0.14. Then 13 by 100 gives me 0.13. Then next I end up getting 0.95, 0.7, and then I have 0.4. This is the frequency density. This particular group, which is 250 to 300, this particular group's frequency density is 0.14, but this particular frequency density is shown by a height which is 2.8. That means I need another new row. So that is this 0.14 is represented by 2.8. So this 2.8 is 20 times larger than the frequency density, which means for me to find the height of all these bars, I need to times each of these values by 20, because each of these is going to be 20 times larger. So that is how I need to calculate. That means 0.13, when I times it by 20, I end up getting 2.6. So this is the height for this one, the first one. Next, 400 to 420, I need to times 0.95 by 20. That gives me 19. So 19 centimeters is the height of the second one. Then 420 to 450 is 0.7 times 20. So 0.7 times 20 is going to be 14. That's going to be height of the third, this column that is given to us. So if I'm to find the next one, it will be 0.4 times 20, which is 8, but that is not asked in this question. Let's move on to the next part of the question. Two of the cars are chosen at random. Find the probability that with a full tank of fuel, one of the cars can travel more than 450 kilometers and the other car can travel not more than 300 kilometers. For it to travel more than 450 kilometers, it's going to be this one. So that's going to be 20 cars out of 80. So can travel more than To a more than 450 is going to be 20 over 80. Not more than 300 is going to be, not more than 300 means it's going to be 7. So that's going to be 7 out of, it should be 79 because this car, one is already picked and another one is picked. In that case, the total, the denominator will be affected. So this is going to be one combination. So more, and this is not more than 300. Now we can form another combination as well. That is, at the beginning, we can put not more than 300, and then the next one we can write it as more than 400 as well. So if that's the combination, it will be 7 over 80 times, it will be 20 over 79. So this is what we would get. These two probabilities you would find and add them together. So then I'm going to put this in the calculator. So let me put it as 70 over, or else I can write one of this and times it by 2 as well. There's no problem with that. So I get the fraction, which is 20 over 80. I need to times this with 7 over 79, because the total reduces by 1 because one of the car is already chosen. That's why it can be this combination or it can be the other combination, the other way around. So that is, I can pick the 7 first out of 80, and then I need to times it with the next fraction, that is 20 out of 79. Sorry, my calculator isn't, the calculator that I'm using here isn't functioning properly today, not sure why. But anyways, this is going to be the answer, which is 7 over 158. That's going to be the answer for this question. Let's move on to the next one that we have. P is the point 17, and then Q is the point 5, negative 5. So I'm going to mark it here. So this is going to be 1 here. This is 7. This is going to be 5, and this point is negative 5. Find P to Q. So I need to find what P to Q is. So if I'm to check what P to Q is, from here, I need to go from 1 to 5. I need to go 4 units to the right. And from that top, which is 7, I need to go all the way up to negative 5. So that's going to be 12 units down. So 4 right and 12 down. I can do it like that using the diagram. Or what I should do is, from the coordinates of Q, I should deduct the coordinates of P. The x value of Q is 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. And then the y value of 5 is negative 5. So negative 5 minus this 7 is going to be negative 12. So this is going to be the column vector for P to Q. The next part of the question is, show that O to P, the modulus of O to P is equal to the modulus of O to Q. The modulus of O to P means, in that case, you need to find the length of O to P. And then you need to find the length of O to Q and show that they are equal. So O to P is going to be this distance. So if I'm to find the length of this distance here, I can apply the Pythagoras' theorem for this triangle that I have. So here, this side and this side will be the shorter length. So OP is like the hypotenuse. So I need to square 1, this length. And this height here, which is 0 to 7 is 7. So 1 squared plus 7 squared, I add them and square root it. That will give me the length of O to P. So O to P, if I'm to find, that's going to be the square root of 1 and 7. Add and square root it. So when we do this, you get the square root of 50. Now I'm going to find what O to Q is. So for me to find what O to Q is, that is from here to here, I need to go 5 to the right and 5 down. So both the ways it's going to be 5 and 5. So it's going to be 5 squared plus 5 squared gives me O to Q, because this O to Q is like the hypotenuse for this right-angled triangle. So 5 squared plus 5 squared, I need to add them and square root it. 5 squared is 25, 5 squared is again 25. So 25 and 25 is 50. So it gives me the same square root of 50. So we can see that both of them end up giving you the same measurement, same length, which is the square root of 50. So I can say that the modulus of O to P is equal to the modulus of O to Q. So we can also do it in another way. That is, we find the column vector of OP and OQ. Forget about the signs and you square those two signs together. So for example, if it's 4 and negative 12 means, in that case, you would square 4 squared plus 12 squared and then square root it. That is how you find the modulus. That's another way to do it. Let's move on to the next part of the question. PQ is a chord of a circle with center O. Calculate the circumference of this circle. So I have put this same diagram at the bottom here. So this is the PQ given to us. We need to calculate the circumference of the circle. So it states that PQ is a chord. So if you are to find the circumference of the circle, we need to do C is equal to 2 pi r. That is the formula to calculate the circumference of a circle. So to do that, I need to do 2 times pi times the radius of this circle has to be calculated. So PQ is the chord. So if you check this chord here, this chord, the ends of the chord is connected to the center, which is O, which means this OP or OQ will be the radius for the circle. We already know the length of OP or OQ because in the previous question, we figured out that OP and OQ, they both are root 50. So I'm going to put that root 50 here. I can put this in the calculator and see what I get as the circumference. So that's going to be 2 times pi times, so I need to put pi, and then I need to times it with the square root of 50. So this gives me 44.428. So correct to 2 decimal places, it's going to be 44.43. 44.43 is going to be the circumference of the circle. The fourth part of the question is, PQ is the diameter of a different circle with center R. Find the coordinates of R. So I have put the coordinates of P and Q that is given at the top so that I don't have to keep scrolling up. And I have put the same diagram again, but I have drawn another circle here for this chord PQ with the center R. So that means the midpoint of this line PQ, of the chord PQ, is the center for the new circle that I have drawn. So this is how it would look like. I need to find the coordinates of R, which means I need to find R is the midpoint of PQ. So I need to find the midpoint of PQ. So for me to find the midpoint of PQ, I need to use the formula x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And then I need to do y1 plus y2, add and divided by 2. So this will get, this is the way how we calculate the midpoint. So P and Q, I'm going to label it as x1, y1, x2, y2. So I need to add 1 and 5 divided by 2. Then I need to add 7 and negative 5 divided by 2. 1 plus 5 divided by 2 is a 3. 7 and negative 5 divided by 2 is a 1, which means R, which is the midpoint of the line PQ, is going to be 3, 1. This is going to be the coordinates of R. Let's move on to the next question. We now need to find the equation of the perpendicular bisector of PQ. Give your answer in the form y is equal to mx plus 3 plus c. So perpendicular bisector of PQ means, so previously we figured out that R is the midpoint of the line PQ. So I have put this R, this is R, so that is the midpoint of PQ. Now, perpendicular line means a line that forms a 90-degree angle with the line that is given to us. But it clearly states that it's a perpendicular bisector, which means this perpendicular line passes through the midpoint of PQ, which is R, which means to find the equation of the line here, I need to first find the gradient of the perpendicular line. To do that, I need to find the gradient of PQ. So the coordinates of P and Q is known to us, that is already given to us in the question. So I'm going to first find the gradient of PQ. So M in this y is equal to mx plus c equation states that that is the gradient. So to find the gradient of PQ, I'm going to label this as x1, y1, x2, y2. So the gradient formula is the difference in the y values over the difference in the x values. So it's going to be minus 5 minus 7 over 5 minus 1. So I need to do this. So this gives me the answer in the simplest form as negative 3 over 1, which is the same as negative 3. Now I need to find the gradient of the perpendicular line. So if I'm to find the gradient of the perpendicular line, now this line is perpendicular to PQ. So that there's a relationship between the gradients, that is, the perpendicular line's gradient will be the negative reciprocal of the gradient that is given to us, of the gradient of this line. Negative reciprocal means you simply flip the fraction and change the sign. So negative 3 has a denominator of 1. So if I flip the fraction, that becomes 1 over 3, and I need to change, it has a negative, I need to change the sign. That way it becomes positive, which means the gradient of the perpendicular line is 1/3. Now I need to find the equation of this perpendicular bisector. So bisector means we know that it goes through the midpoint of PQ. In the previous question, we found the midpoint of PQ, which is R, that is, the coordinates of the midpoint is 3, 1, which means the perpendicular line has to go through the coordinate point 3, 1. So to do that, I'm going to first form the half completed equation, which is y is equal to 1 over 3x plus c. For me to find the y-intercept, I need the midpoint of PQ, which is R, because the perpendicular line or the bisector is passing through that point R. So I'm going to substitute the value of x and y of this coordinate point 3 and 1 into this half completed equation of the perpendicular line for me to find the y-intercept. So when I do that, I get 1 is equal to 1/3 times 3 plus c. So 1/3 times 3 is going to make a 1. So 1 is equal to 1 plus c, which means if I take the 1 to the other side, it becomes 1 minus 1, which gives me the value of c as 0, which means the y-intercept of this is 0. So as you can see here, the line, the perpendicular line, it passes through the origin. That's the meaning, because the y-intercept is 0 means it passes through 0 on the y-axis, which is going to be the origin. So like this. So the equation of my line will be y is equal to 1 over 3x plus 0, but there's no need for us to write the 0 there because the y-intercept is a 0, that's why. Let's move on to the next part of the question. The position vector of A is A, and the position vector of B is B. M is a point on AB such that AM to MB is 2 to 3. Find in terms of A and B the position vector of M. Give your answer in the simplest form. So I've just drawn a diagram here, but you can locate A and B anywhere you want. I have marked it this way, and the point M, I need to change that a little bit. So I need to mark somewhere over here, because only then it will be in the ratio. If this is point M, it will be in the ratio 2 to 3. We need to find in terms of A and B the position vector of M. Position vector of M means simply we need to find what O to M is. This is what I need to find. So O to A, the position vector of A means from the origin to A. So O to A is given to us as A. The position vector of B is given as B. So I have drawn it in an opposite direction like this. So this is going to be B. I need to find what O to M is. So if I'm to find what O to M is, I'm gonna do O to M is the same as O to A and then A to M. So I need to find what O to A is and then add that with A to M. I already know what O to A is because that is given to us in the question as A. I need to add this with the vector A to M. A to M vector I need to find. So first what I'm going to do is I need to find what A to B is. So if I'm to find what A to B is from here to here, the total vector, if I'm to find, I need to go from O to A to O. So I need to do A to O, and then I need to go O to B. That is how I need to go. So O to A is A. So A to O will be the opposite direction. So it's going to be negative A. O to B is given to us already as B. So this is going to be minus A plus B, which is going to be the vector A to B. I need to find what A to M is. A to M is in the ratio, now if you consider A to M and M to B, it's in the ratio 2 to 3, which means A to M is 2/5 of A to B. So I can write 2/5 of A to B. The reason why I have a 5 here is when I add the 2 and the 3, I get 5. So out of 5 portions, the first 2 portions, that is going to be 2/5. So 2/5 of A to B is going to be A to M. So A to B is negative A plus B. This is what I need to simplify. So I have an A here. When I multiply it, it gives you negative 2/5 A. And when I multiply these two, I get 2/5 B. 1A minus 2/5 A. So here in front of this A, we have a 1, even though that's not given to us. So when I do the subtraction, it gives me 3/5 A, and then I have 2/5 B. This is going to be the vector O to M. So that is the position vector of M. So whenever they mention position vector, it's always from the origin. So I have marked the origin as O. So in this case, I have considered the diagram like this. You may consider any 2 points on a coordinate plane. That is of your own choice. Let's move on to the next question that we have. That is question 6. The diagram shows the positions of lighthouse A, B, a boat which is C, this is the boat, and harbor H. C is due east of B, so this is in the east direction, so that means from north to east it will be a 90-degree angle. Find the bearing of the harbor from the boat. So if you are to find the bearing of the harbor from the boat, means from whatever the location that is measured, that is where the angle has to be calculated. From boat C, that means at C, I need to start measuring the angle. The 2 locations mentioned are harbor and the boat. So this is the harbor, this is the boat. First, I need to draw a line connecting the 2 locations. From boat C means at boat C, I need to start measuring. So I need to draw the north. I need to measure in the clockwise direction until I meet the line connecting these 2 locations. So this is the angle that I need to measure. I know that this is 90 degrees, which means this north and this north is parallel to each other. So this will anyways be 90 degrees too, or you know that this is north, this direction will be east, will be west for C. From C to B, if I check, it's going to be the west direction. So that's going to be a 90-degree angle. So for me to find this angle from 360 degrees, I need to deduct the 90 degrees and this 25 degrees that I have. So when I do that, I get 245 degrees. And when it comes to bearing, it's important that we write it using 3 digits. We need to measure from the north in the clockwise direction. So we have 3 digits already. This is my answer. In the next part of the question, show that angle CBH is 100. So CBH is going to be this angle. So I need to show that as 100. So that will be 100 because this angle, and CBH, when I add, it should be equal to 180 because that is the angles in a triangle. So if I'm to find what CBH is, I need to deduct the 55 and 25 that I have from 180 degrees. So when I do that, it gives me the value of the angle CBH that is equal to 100 degrees. So when they ask you to show that this is how much it is equal to, you need to show the proof of it. So this is how you should be showing it. The next part of the question is, show that BH is 13.7 kilometers, correct to 1 decimal place. So I have put a smaller version of the diagram here without the complete portion. I have removed this part here. So we need to show that BH, that is this side, is 13.7. So from the previous step, we know that this angle is 100 degrees. So this is the north that was given to us. And we need to find what BH is. We need to show that BH is 13.7, means we need to show the proof of it. In this case, we will have to make use of the sine rule or the cosine rule. But we are going to specifically use the sine rule here because this angle and the side opposite to it is known to us. This angle is given, but we need to find the side here. So we are going to use the sine rule. So in the sine rule, it's going to be A over sine A is equal to B over sine B. This is how the sine rule is. And then we have C over sine C. We need to use any two fractions. But in this case, I'm going to label it as, I'll label, this is C. So I'm going to label this side as C. This is angle B. So I'm going to label this side as B. So it will be C over sine C. C is what we are supposed to find. Sine C is 25 degrees equals B is 32 over sine B is sine of the angle B, which is sine 100. For me to find what C is, I need to isolate C. So I can cross multiply and then bring everything that is connected to this C to the other side, or directly take sine 25 to the other side. So it gets multiplied. So it will be 32 times sine 25 divided by sine 100, which gives us the value of C. I'm going to put this in the calculator. So I need to do 32 times sine 25. And then the next one I have is in the bottom, I have sine 100. I'm going to close the brackets. This gives me the value of BH, which is going to be 13.7, correct to 1 decimal place. So the value of BH, which is C in our case, is going to be 13.7 kilometers. So now we have found what BH is. Let's move on to the next part of the question. In this question, we are supposed to calculate the bearing of A from B. So I have put a smaller version of that diagram here because I can't keep scrolling, that's why. So we need to calculate the bearing of A from B, means this is where A is, this is where B is. A from B means the two locations mentioned are A and B. So I need to connect the two locations. So this is the line connecting the two locations. From B means at B, I need to draw the north and measure the angle until I reach the line connecting the two locations. This is the angle that I'm supposed to find. But for me to find this angle here, this angle here is a 90-degree angle. We already know that. We also know the value of this angle because from the previous, I think in this B part of the question or A part of the question, we know that that is 100 degrees. I need to find how much this angle is. So for me to find the value of this angle, I will have to make use of this triangle that is given to us. In this triangle, A to B, A to H, and B to H is also known to us. B to H we found as 13.7, that is already known to us. I need to find how much this angle is, and then that answer has to be added with the 100 and the 90. That will give me the bearing of A from B. So for me to find that, I'm going to label the triangle here. So this is B, so I'm going to label this as the lowercase letter, in means lowercase letter. This is A, the lowercase letter for that is simple A. And here this is H, I will label it as H. Now I need to find angle B, so I will have to make use of the cosine rule in this case. So angle B means this is where that angle B has to be. That means whatever the letter that you write here, the lowercase letter of it only should be written here, which means I should write the formula as B squared is equal to, now our B and C in our case will be A and H. So I'll write it as A squared plus H squared minus 2AH cos the uppercase letter of this letter, which is B. this angle is what I'm supposed to calculate. I'm going to first rearrange this formula and make B the subject, and then I can substitute the values. I'm going to take this entire thing to the other side and bring this B squared to this side. So that will be 2AH cos B is equal to A squared plus H squared minus B squared. For me to find what B is, I need to make B the subject. So I need to first take 2AH to the other side. So it will be cos B is equal to A squared plus H squared minus B squared over 2AH. For me to find what B is, I need to do inverse of cos. So for me to do inverse of cos, I will write it like this. B is equal to inverse cos of the answer that we get here. I'm going to substitute the values now. So I have cos inverse, and here I would have A. A is 13.7, so I need to do 13.7 squared, plus H is going to be 11 squared, minus B is 14, so I need to do 14 squared over 2 times A is 13.7 times H is 11. And I need to do inverse cos for this. That will give me the value of the angle B that I have shaded or marked in purple here. So then let's put this in the calculator. So I'm going to do inverse cos. So inverse cos, and then I need to put the fraction. I need to do 13.7 squared plus 11 squared. And then minus 14 squared. And then in the denominator, I need to do 2 times 13.7 times 11. And then I need to close the brackets. So this gives me 68.044. So correct 2 decimal places, it's going to be 68.04 degrees. Now I need to calculate the bearing. So I need to calculate the bearing. I need to add this 68.04 with the 100 degrees that we have and this 90 degrees that we have. So when I add these three together, it gives me the bearing, which is 258.04 degrees. Here, when we did this question, I rearranged it completely and then substituted everything, and I entered the entire thing in the calculator. You could do it step by step as well, but the best way to do it is like this, because if not, even small changes for sine, cos, or tan can give you a very large difference. So that's why I completely rearranged it, made B the subject, and then after substituting the values, I put everything together in the calculator. So that way, the accuracy is high as well. Let's move on to the next part of the question, which is question D. At 1 p.m., boat C sails 32 kilometers directly to the harbor at a speed of 10 knots. Calculate the time when boat C arrives at the harbor. Give this time correct to the nearest minute. So if I'm to do this question, it also states that 1 knot is the same as 1.852 kilometers per hour, which means if I'm to find what 10 knots is, I need to do 10 times 1.852. So this will be the speed in kilometers per hour. We also know that speed is equal to distance over time. I need to find the time taken. So I need to just switch these two around to make t the subject. So time will be equal to distance over speed. The distance is already known to us, which is 32 kilometers. I need to divide it by the speed. The speed is going to be 10 knots, which is the same as 10 times 1.852. This will be in kilometers per hour. So when I do the division here, I will get the time in hours. So first, let's do that. So I'm going to do 32 divided by 10 times 1.852. So when I do that, this is what I get as the answer. But then this is going to be in hours. I need to convert it into minutes. So I must times it by 60 to convert it into minutes. Because the reason why I'm converting it into minutes is, actually there was an error, hold on. I'm gonna put this again. 32 divided by 10 times 1.852 gives us this as the answer. I times it by a 60, that will be in minutes. And then I need to convert that into, I need to check how many minutes and how many hours that will be. So I'm going to press another button. So times that answer by 60, this answer, I need to press it like this. Hold on, there is an error again. Okay, so this is how it would look like. So I'm sorry, my calculator, even though I did not press it again, it automatically, like when I press it once, it keeps pressing twice. That's why I ended up getting 6,000 odd as the answer. But whatever the answer that we got previously when we did 32 over 10 times 1.852, that answer will be in hours. I need to times it by 60 to convert it into minutes. So this is how many minutes I would get. And then I need to press this button here. So that will give me the total number of minutes, seconds, and things like that. So it's going to be 103 minutes, 40 seconds. And likewise, it keeps continuing. But I need to write it to the nearest minute. That's going to be 103 minutes. And 40 seconds means that's going to be rounded up because this is more than 30. So it will be 104 minutes. So this is 104 minutes. That is what I get as the answer. But then this 104 minutes, in this 104, I'm going to deduct a 60. So that will be 44. 104 minus 60 is equal to 44, which means this is the same as 1 hour and 44 minutes. That means if at 1 p.m., if it starts to sail from sea, if the boat sails if it travels to the harbor, then the time taken when it reaches the harbor, it will be 2:44 p.m. So I'll write it as 2:44 p.m. because from 1 to this 1 p.m., I need to add 1 hour and 44 minutes. That gives me 2:44 p.m. Let's move on to the next part of the question. Calculate the distance of boat C to the harbor when boat C is at the shortest distance from the lighthouse B. Now, this term shortest distance, you need to understand that they're referring to the perpendicular distance. Now, the question is to calculate the distance boat C to the harbor. That is somewhere this length only has to be measured. But then when boat C is at the shortest distance from lighthouse B. So from B, it's at the shortest distance means from B, we need to draw a perpendicular line until it meets this line. This is how it would look like. That means this is the location of boat C now. So you can see this boat C is perpendicular or is at the shortest distance from this lighthouse B. When it's at that distance, then we need to calculate the distance of the boat to the harbor. That means we need to find what this x is. So this x is, this is the distance. This is what we are supposed to calculate. So to do that, I'm going to make use of this right-angled triangle. So if you consider this right-angled triangle, this is that 90-degree angle that we have. We have the angle given to us. BH is 13.7. That's the hypotenuse. And I need to find what x is. So BH is the hypotenuse. X is the adjacent side for this angle. That means I need to use cos. So I need to do cos theta is equal to adjacent over the hypotenuse. The angle is known to us, which is 55, is equal to the adjacent side, that is x over the hypotenuse, which is 13.7. So for me to find what x is, I need to do 13.7 times cos 55. This will give me the distance from C, from the location where the boat is, up to the harbor. So then I'm going to put this in the calculator. So that's 13.7 times cos 55. When I do that, I get 7.8579. That means correct to 2 decimal places, it's going to be 7.86. So 7.86 kilometers is going to be the answer for this question. Let's now move on to the next question that we have, which is this one. The diagram shows a box in the shape of a cuboid. The box is open at the top. Work out the surface area of the inside of the box. Open at the top means to calculate the surface area, you need to understand that there are only 5 faces or 5 surfaces. You need to add all those areas together. So if you check the bottom, it's going to be 70 times 30. So that's going to be just once because it does not have a top. So with this, I need to add this surface that is going to be 40 times 30. So I need to do 40 times 30. I have 2 such faces, so I'm going to double this. So times it by 2. Then I need to add this surface, that is the surface at the back, which is 70 times 40. So I need to do 70 times 40. I have one at the front as well. So I need to times this by 2. So when I put this in the calculator, I end up getting 10,100 square centimeters as the surface area for this open box. So it has 5 surfaces. Let's move on to the next part of the question. Cylinders with height 20 centimeters and diameter 15 centimeters are placed in the box. Work out the maximum number of cylinders that can completely fit inside the box. So I have put that cuboid, a smaller version of that here, the cuboid that was given at the top. So height is 20 centimeters means, now here the height of the cuboid is 40, which means I can place 2 cylinders. So along the height, I can place 2 cylinders. Then along the length, if I check 70 centimeters means the diameter is 15. The diameter is 15 means I can place 4 cylinders along this length because 4 times 15 is going to be 60. I cannot place beyond that. There will be 10 centimeters gap, but then we cannot place another cylinder because the diameter of a cylinder is 15 centimeters. So I can place 4 along the length. If I check the width, it's going to be 30. So the diameter is going to be 15. So I can place 2 along that side. So it's going to be 2 times 4 times 2. So this will give me the total number of cylinders that can be placed. So that's going to be 16 cylinders. This is the maximum number of cylinders that can fit inside this box. Let's move on to the next part of the question. A solid bronze cone has a mass 750 grams. The density of bronze is given to us. The ratio of the radius of the cone to the height of the cone is given to us as 1:3. So if I draw a small cone here, so let's say this is the cone. If the radius is r, that is one portion, the height of the cone is 3 times of it. So that means the height of the cone will be 3r. That's the meaning. Show that the radius of the cone is 2.99 centimeters. Correct to 3 significant figures. Density is given to us, the formula for density, and the formula for the volume of the cone is also given to us. Now, for me to find, I need to use the volume of the cone formula, which is 1/3 times pi times. The radius has to be substituted here. In this case, if I consider the radius, so that is going to be r squared times h. I need to first find that. So I'm going to use this formula, density is equal to mass over volume, that is given to us. For me to find the volume, I need to make volume the subject. So I need to switch these 2 places. So volume is equal to mass over density. The mass is given to us, which is 750 grams. I need to divide it by the density, which is 8.9 grams per cubic centimeters. So when I do that, I get the volume of the cone. So I can find the volume of the cone here. So if I find the volume of the cone, let's see what we get first. So we have 750. I need to divide it by 8.9. When I do that, I get this as the answer. This is going to be the volume of the cone. So I'll write it as 84.2697. So I'll write it as 84.2697 cubic centimeters. This is the volume of the cone. So I can substitute it here as the volume of the cone is 84.2697, which is equal to 1/3 times pi times the radius of the cone is r, so I'm going to put r squared times the radius was r, that's why I replaced r here. The height of the cone is 3r, so I'm going to put 3r as the height because it's 3 times the radius, that's 3r. I need to solve this and make r the subject. So to do that, I need to bring the 3 to the other side, so it will get multiplied with the number that I have here. And then I need to bring pi to the other side. It's already multiplying, so when I take it to the other side, it will divide. So in this side, it will be equal to 3r cube, because r squared times 3r is 3r cube. So I need to bring the 3 to the other side, means I will have to divide it by 3. That way I'll get what r cube is. And that answer that I get has to be cube rooted for me to find what r is. So I'm going to put this in the calculator and see what I get as the radius. But I'm not going to use just 84.2697 in the calculator, but whatever the answer that I got in the calculator, the complete answer is what I'm going to use. So I need to times this answer by 3. That answer has to be divided by 3 pi. So I'm going to divide by 3 pi. So I'll just put 3 pi. And the answer that I get when I do the division there is this. And then I need to do the cube root of my answer. So I need to do the cube root of the answer. So it gives me the radius as 2.99. So when you put this in the calculator, you end up getting the radius of the cone as 2.99 centimeters. We're supposed to show that the radius is 2.99, so that is what we get here. Let's move on to the next part of the question. We now need to calculate the total surface area of the cone. When we consider the surface area of the cone has two portions. One is the circle that we have at the bottom, and the next one is the curved surface area. The curved surface area formula is given to us, which is pi r L. We already know the area of the circle, which is pi r squared. At the beginning, it was mentioned that this is a solid cone. So as it's a solid cone, definitely it will have the circle at the bottom as well. If it was a hollow cone, like a party cap or something like that, in that case, the circle will not be there. So we will just go with the curved surface area of the cone. That will be the total surface area of the cone. But in this case, we will have to add pi r squared to it as well. Now, if I'm to find the total surface area in this case, I need to do pi times the radius of the cone, which is 2.99. I need to square that. Add that with pi times a radius, which is 2.99 times L. L is the slant height. So when we consider L here, that is going to be the length from here to here. But for me to find that, the radius is known to us, which is 2.99. The height of the cone is also known to us because it's going to be 3 times 2.99, that is the height. Using those two, I need to apply the Pythagoras theorem to find what L is. So for me to find what L is, I need to do the square root of, because L is the hypotenuse for this right angle triangle. So I need to square the two shorter legs, add them together and square root it. So 2.99 squared plus, when I do 3 times 2.99, I get 8.97. So 8.97 also has to be squared, added together, and I need to find what that length is. So I'm going to put that in the calculator. Square root of 2.99 squared plus 8.97 squared. I need to find that. I end up getting 9.455 as the slant length. So 9.455 is the slant length. So that value has to be substituted here. So I'm going to put 9.455 here. I need to put this entire thing in the calculator for me to calculate the surface area. So then that's going to be pi times 2.99 square plus pi times 2.99 times 9.455. So I need to multiply them together. I get the surface area of the total surface area of the cone, which is 116.9, and this will be in square centimeters. 116.9 square centimeters is the surface area of the cone given to us. Let's now move on to the next question that we have, which is question 8. Let's now do question 8. On the axis, we need to sketch the graph that is given to us and write the values where the graph meets the x-axis and the y-axis. So in this case, for us to do this question, for us to sketch a graph, there are 3 points we need to know. One is we need to know the direction, the y-intercept, and the turning point. The direction is decided by the sign in front of x squared. Now here we have x squared, which is positive. If it's positive, the graph will be in the shape of U. If it's negative, it will be in the shape of an N, which means here it's going to be in the shape of a U. The second thing that we need to understand is the y-intercept. Y-intercept is the value of C, that is the place where the graph meets the y-axis. So in our equation, the y-intercept is negative 18. So that is where it meets the y-axis. So I can mark negative 18 somewhere over here. So this is where it meets the y-axis. And I should draw the graph in the shape of a U. I should also find the turning point. So for me to find the turning point, I need to complete the square. So this equation that I have, which is y is equal to x squared plus 7x minus 18 is what I have. For me to complete the square, the second term that I have here, that is 7x, the coefficient of that x is plus 7. So I need to divide that by 2. That is the first thing that I need to do. So when I divide that by 2, I end up getting 3.5. So it will be x plus 3.5 within the brackets. I need to put the square, and then I need to subtract the square of this amount. So that is 3.5, because now here we have 3.5. I need to subtract the square of this. The square of 3.5 is equal to 12.25. I need to deduct that 12.25, and then I have this minus 18. I need to put that down. So I have x plus 3.5 square. I can simplify these two together by combining them, which is minus 30.25. So this is how we first complete the square. And after completing the square, the number that we have here and here is the one that is involved in the turning point. But this number that we write here, its opposite sign has to be written, which means it's going to be minus 3.5 as the x value of the turning point, and the y value will stay the same, which is minus 30.25. So using these two, we need to draw the graph. So this is going to be the turning point. Now, in the question, we are also asked to find the values where the graph meets the x-axis and the y-axis. Y-axis is going to be the y-intercept, which is negative 18. This is our turning point. We should also find the place where it meets the x-axis. That means the x-axis, at the x-axis, if we draw the graph, so our graph would look like this. So minus 3.5, if I am to mark it here, and then minus 30.25 will be somewhere over here. So this is where it's going to turn. So our graph would look like this. It should be in the shape of a U that goes up like this. And I need to do the same thing in the other side as well. So our graph would look like this. So this is how our graph would look like. But we are not just asked to sketch it. We have used the U shape, the y-intercept, and we also know the turning point. We are supposed to identify the place where the graph meets the y-axis as well as the x-axis. We already know the place where it meets the y-axis, which is -18. We need to mark where it meets the x-axis. So that's going to be this point and this point. On the x-axis, the y value is 0. So to find these two numbers, what we need to do is, to this equation, which is the equation of the graph, which is x squared plus 7x minus 18, this is the equation of the graph. At these 2 points, the value of y will be 0 because they are the x-intercepts. X-intercepts, the y value will be 0. So I need to replace the y value that I have with a 0, and I need to solve this. Now, for me to solve this, the expression that is given to us, which is x squared plus 7x minus 18, I need to factorize it. So it's like we are finding the roots of x, or roots of the equation. Or it's like we are trying to factorize and find what x is. So first we need to factorize this. To factorize this, you need to find the two numbers that multiply together to give you -18, and the two numbers that add together to give you the coefficient of x, which is this +7. So the two numbers in this case will be 2 and 9, and we need to also decide the sign. So 9 will be positive and the 2 has to be negative. Only then, when multiplied together, we get -18, and when added together, we get +7. So here we get the value of, we get the fact, when we factorize it, we get x, and then we have -2, and x, and then we have +2. So I have directly factorized here because the coefficient in front of x squared is a 1. If it's not a 1, we will have to do it as x squared, whatever the number term that we have here, then -2x plus 9x minus 18, then make it into 2 pairs and factorize it. But here I was able to directly factorize it this way because the coefficient in front of x squared is a 1. Now this is equal to a 0, which means these two when multiplied gives us a 0, means either the x minus 2 should be equal to a 0 or x plus 9 has to be equal to a 0, which gives us the value of x, which is 2. And in this case, we get the value of x as -9. That means here it's going to be a 2, and this value here is going to be a -9. So now we know we have marked the values where the graph meets the x-axis, as well as we have found the place where it meets the y-axis. So this is what we need to know. Let's move on to the next part of the question. Find the derivative of this equation, which is y is equal to x squared minus 3x minus 28. So the derivative is like another name for the gradient, but this is for the gradient of curves. So if you are to find the gradient, we call it, now that is the derivative function. If we are to find, we need to multiply the powers with the number in front of that term. So here we have a 2, we multiply it with the coefficient of that x squared, which is a 1, so that is 2, and then reduce the power here by 1. So it becomes x to the power 2 becomes x to the power 1. Then the next one we have minus 3x, the power of x is 1, multiply it with the coefficient, which is -3. 1 times -3 is -3, and then we need to reduce the power of x by 1, so 1 becomes a 0. So we don't have to write that because x to the power 0 is going to be a 0, is going to be equal to a 1. And this 28 does not have an x, so this is going to be the derivative of this equation that is given to us. The next part of the question is to find the coordinates of the turning point of this function. So there are two ways in which you can do. One is by completing the square, we can find the turning points of this equation. Or as this question is connected to this, and we already know the derivative function, which is the gradient, the turning point will always have a gradient of 0. So whenever they mention the terms turning point, maximum point, minimum point, or stationary point, we need to understand that the gradient is 0, which means I'm going to use this derivative function that we found, but make this 2x minus 3 equal to a 0 because at the turning point, the gradient is 0. I'm going to solve this and find what x is. So to find what x is, I need to take the minus 3 to the other side. It becomes plus 3. And then I need to take the 2 that gets multiplied to the other side. It gets divided, which gives us the value of x as 1.5. Now I know the value of x, which is 1.5. Now I need to find the coordinates of the turning point, which means I need to know the y value as well. To find that, the value of x, I'm going to substitute into the equation of that curve, which is y is equal to x squared minus 3x minus 28. So to find the y value, it will be x squared, so that is 1.5 squared minus 3 times x, that is 3 times 1.5 minus 28. I'm going to put this entire thing in the calculator. It gives us minus 30.25. So this is the y value. So the x value is 1.5. The y value is minus 30.5. So 1.5 comma minus 30.25 will be the coordinates of the turning point. Like I already mentioned, we can also make use of completing the square to find the coordinates of the turning point as well. Let's now move on to the next question that we have. The line y is equal to 5 minus 2x intersects the graph y is equal to x squared minus 3x minus 28 at point P and Q. Find the coordinates of P and Q. And we need to write our answer correct to 2 decimal places. Now, in this case, this is actually a simultaneous equation question. So we have a straight line graph and a quadratic graph. You need to find the place where they intersect. So I have just drawn a small sketch here to give you an idea of what that is. So that is, this is the place where the straight line and the curve meets, and this is the next point where they meet. You need to find the coordinates of these 2 points. That's the meaning. Now to do this, now I'm going to write the 2 equations, which is y is equal to 5 minus 2x. The next one is y is equal to x squared minus 3x minus 28. And whenever we have simultaneous equations, there are different ways in which we can solve. We can use the elimination, substitution, and even the graphical method. But here we are not given a grid, so we are not going to use the graphical method. And especially when we have quadratic equations involved, always try making use of the substitution method to solve the simultaneous equation. So here, I'm going to substitute the value of y. Here, y is already made the subject. So I'm going to substitute that into the y in the next equation. So I need to replace this y with this 5 minus 2x. So that becomes 5 minus 2x is equal to x squared minus 3x minus 28. So I'm going to solve this. So to solve a quadratic equation, I need to make the equation equal to a 0. So I'm going to take the 5 and the minus 2x to the other side. So it will be 0 is equal to x squared minus 3x minus 28. The plus 5 goes to the other side, becomes minus 5. Minus 2x, when it goes to the other side, becomes plus 2x. And I'm going to combine all the like terms here. That becomes x squared, and minus 3x and plus 2x becomes minus x. Minus 28 and minus 5 becomes minus 33. This is the one that is equal to a 0. Now, we know that x squared minus x minus 33 is equal to a 0. So to solve this, I'm going to use the quadratic formula, which is x is equal to minus b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. This is a formula that I'm going to use. But for me to substitute into this, I need to know what a, b, and c is. So first, we need to make sure we write the equation in the form x squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. That way we can identify what a, b, and c is. So here a is nothing, means there is an invisible 1. So the value of a is 1. B is going to be the number in front of this x, which is minus 1. And c is going to be the number that we have here. That is going to be minus 33. So I have the numbers here. I'm going to substitute into this formula. It will be minus 1, because that's the value of b, plus minus in the square root. I need to put the value of b, which is minus 1 squared, minus 4 times the value of a is 1, times the value of c is minus 33. This entire thing should be over 2 times the value of a, which is 1. I'm going to put this in the calculator with a plus first and see what I get as the answer, and then with a minus and see what I get as the value. So that way we will end up getting 2 values for x. So let's put this in the calculator. So the fraction, so minus minus 1, even if I do not put the bracket for this one, there's no problem. But for this negative number, you have to put the brackets. If not, it will give you an error or an incorrect answer. So I'm going to put the plus. I have the square root. I need to put -1 with the square. So I'm going to close the bracket square. Minus 4 times 1 times minus 33. And then at the bottom, I need to do 2 times 1, which is a 2. So when I do that, I get the value as 6.27. That is correct. 2 decimal places was mentioned in the question. So it's going to be 6.27. And then the next value is going to be when it has a minus here. So I'm going to change that into a minus and see what I get. I get minus 5.27, which is correct to 2 decimal places. So it's going to be 6.27 and minus 5.27 as the 2 values for x's. Now I need to find what y is. For me to find what y is, the equation for y I'm going to use, I can use the first one or the second one. I'm going to use the first one, which looks much more easier, which is y is equal to 5 minus 2x. So into this equation, the 2 values of x that we found, we are going to substitute it and see what we get as the y value. So it will be 5 minus 2 times 6.27. And the other one will be 5 minus 2 times the value of x is minus 2.7. So I'm going to put this in the calculator and see what I get, as well as this one in the calculator, and I'm going to check what I get as the y values. So let's do that then. So I have 5 minus 2 times 6.27. So I put the bracket so we know that it's multiplying. This gives me the answer minus 7.54. And then I need to do the same thing with minus 5.27. So it will be 5 minus 2 times minus 5.27. So when we do that, I get the value as 15.54. So then the y values we get are minus 7.54 and we got 15.54. So now these two will form the coordinate points. So that's going to be this x with this y. So that's going to be 6.27 and minus 7.54. This x value will combine with this and form the next coordinate point, which is minus 5.27 and 15.54. These two will be the places where P and these two are going to be the coordinates of the point P and Q. That is going to be these 2 points. Let's now move on to the next question that we have, which is question 9. There are 3 functions given to us. We need to find what f3 is. Now, if it's given as f and if the 3 is given within the brackets means that's the input. Now, for example, if it's given as fx is equal to 3 means this is the output. When it's given as an input, you need to replace x with that number. When it's given this way, you need to equate that function with function to that number that is given to us. So here, the value of x in the f of x function has to be replaced with a 3. So it's going to be 4 times 3 plus 1. So when we do 4 times 3 plus 1, we get the value as 13. That's the answer for this. Next, we need to do GF3. That means first you need to find what f of 3 is. Then that answer is going to be the input for G or G of X function machine. So that is F3 is going to be the input for f of x is a 3. So that's going to be 4 times 3 plus 1, which is a 13. We already know that. So now we need to find what G13 is, because the input of the G of X function is 13. That's the meaning. The answer of f of 3 is going to be the input of the G of X function machine. So it's going to be 6 minus 2 times 13. So 6 minus 2 times 13 is negative 20. The next question is, we need to find the inverse function of G. To find the inverse function, we need to do 2 steps. One is to make x the subject, and then we need to switch x and y. So G of X function is 6 minus 2x. So instead of writing it as g of x is equal to 6 minus 2x, I'm going to replace this g of x with y. So y is equal to 6 minus 2x. I need to make x the subject. So to make x the subject, I'm going to bring this minus 2x to the other side. So it becomes positive 2x, and the y to this side. So it becomes a negative y. And to make x the subject, I need to bring the 2 to the other side. So I need to divide by 2. So that way I have made x the subject. After making x the subject, I need to switch x and y around. So in the place where y is, I need to put x, and the place where x is, I need to put y. So that is going to be 6 minus x over 2. This 6 minus x over 2 is going to be the inverse function of g. This is how we find it. And we can also, in this case, I can also, instead of bringing the minus 2x to the other side, I could have just taken the y to the other side and divided by minus 2. There's no problem with that. We will still end up getting an answer, but then that answer will have too many negatives in it. That's the reason why I made sure to bring the minus 2x to the other side and y to this side. But that will not be incorrect either. Let's move on to the next question, which is question C. Find x when f of x is equal to g of 2x minus 7. So f of x function is already known to us, which is 4x plus 1. G of x is known to us as, so g of x function is known to us as 6 minus 2x. But we need to find what g of 2x minus 7 is. That is, this 2x minus 7 is going to be the input for the g of x function machine, which means the x in that function is replaced with 2x minus 7. So that's going to be 6 minus 2 times the x gets replaced with this 2x minus 7. I need to simplify this. So it's going to be 6 minus 2 times minus 2x is going to be minus 4x. Minus 2 times minus 7 is going to be plus 14. So then 6 minus 4x plus 14 is going to be 20 minus 4x. This is going to be the answer for g of 2x minus 7. Now, f of x is already known to us as 4x plus 1. That is how it was given to us. So now f of x is equal to g 2x minus 7 means f of x is known to us, which is 4x plus 1. G 2x minus 7 we found, which is 20 minus 4x. I need to rearrange this to find what x is. So to do that, I'm going to bring the minus 4x to the other side, plus 1 to this side. I already have 4x here. Minus 4x, when it goes to the other side, it becomes plus 4x. I have 20 in the right side. I need to bring the plus 1 to the other side, so I need to deduct a 1. 4x and 4x makes 8x, which is equal to 20 minus 1, that is 19. So for me to find what x is, I need to bring the 8 to the other side. So it divides the 19. So 19 divided by 8 is going to be the value of x. So 19 divided by 8 is 2.375. This is how we need to find the value of x by solving it. Let's now move on to the next part of the question. We need to find the value of h2. So in this case, we need to use the h of x function machine. When we consider the h of x function machine, a function that was given to us in the question, that is 3 to the power x minus 2. Now, if I'm to find what h2 is, first I need to find what h2 is. That is, when the input is 2 for the h of x function machine, you need to find what that answer is. That answer that we get has to be sent again into the h of x function machine, and you need to find what the answer is. So if I'm to draw a diagram to explain it, it's going to be like this. We have two function machines. Both the function machines are 3 to the power x minus 2 because they both are the h of x function machines. And here, first the input is 2. You first need to find what's going to be the output for that. That output acts as the input for the second function machine, even though it's the same thing, and then we need to find the output. That's the meaning. So first I need to find what h2 is. So for me to find what h2 is, the x that I have in the h of x function machine has to be replaced with the 2. So 3 to the power 2 minus 2 is what I need to find. 2 minus 2 is going to be equal to a 0. So that's going to be 3 to the power 0. Anything to the power 0 is equal to a 1, which means the answer that we get, the output of the first function machine, is a 1. That's the meaning. This output acts as the input for the next function machine, but that is going to be again the h of x function machine. So it's going to be 3 to the power x minus 2 again, but this time the x will be replaced with this answer that we got, which is 1. So it will be 3 to the power 1 minus 2. So that's going to be equal to 3 to the power minus 1, which is the same as 1 over 3. This 1 over 3 is the answer for this question. Now let's move on to the last part of this question, which is question E. So we need to find x when the inverse function of h is equal to a 10. Now to explain this question, I'm going to draw a small diagram. So here, the inverse function of h of x is equal to a 10 means, remember at the beginning I did mention that. Now, if it's, for example, if it's given as h 10 means, the meaning of this is 10 is the input of the original function or the h of x function. The same way, if it's given as h of x is equal to a 10, if it's given like this means, this 10 is the output of the original function or the h of x function. But in this case, it's given as inverse function's output is only equal to a 10. So we need to find what this x is. That means we need to find what's x in this inverse function here. So I'm going to draw a diagram like I mentioned. So let me draw a small diagram here. So this is something to do with the h of x function. The h of x function is 3 to the power x minus 2. That means if I send in x inside the function machine, I will get an output of 3 to the power x minus 2. That's the meaning of this function. Now here, this is something to do with the inverse function. Inverse function means the reverse of it. That means if I send an input from this side, I will get an output here. Now I'm going to relate it with this question here. That is, the inverse function's output is only equal to a 10. That's the meaning of this. That means this is the inverse function. Inverse function's input is going to be here. That means inverse function's output will be here. So I need to put this 10 that is given to us here. So we can clearly see that the input of the inverse function and the output of the original function will be equal to each other. These two will be equal. The same way, the output of the inverse function will be equal to the input of the original function. That means this clearly explains that the 10 is equal to x, which means x is equal to a 10 in this case. But our question is to find x of the inverse function means we are supposed to find the input of the inverse function. So the meaning of this is what the input of the inverse function is. You need to find the input of the inverse function. The input of the inverse function is the same as the output of the original function, which means I need to find what 3 to the power x minus 2 is, but we already know that this x is equal to a 10 because I clearly mentioned that the 10, which is the output of the inverse function, is the same as the input of the original function, which means x is equal to 10. So I need to replace this x with the 10 that is given to us. So it will be 3 to the power 10 minus 2. So when we do 3 to the power 10 minus 2, that is 3 to the power 8. I need to find what 3 to the power 8 is. That is going to be my answer. So 3 to the power 8 is equal to 6,561. So 6,561 is the answer for this question. So that means the meaning of this is, if I send 10 as the input of the original function, I will get an output of 6,561 as the output for the original function. That output is the same as the input of the inverse function. So we are asked to find what this inverse function's input is. So input of the inverse function is the same as the output of the original function. So first we figured out what x is, then replace this x with the 10. And then we found the answer, which is 6,561. That's the value for x in this question. With that, we will be done with all questions in this paper. Thank you for watching.